Good evening, guys. Welcome back to the DNF1 channel. It's just myself tonight, so obviously make sure you hit that like button and, of course, subscribe to the channel. Adam will be back this week. He will be covering the Brazilian Grand Prix. This is our obviously our last live stream from the DNF1 channel until, of course, the Brazilian Grand Prix. They'll be going back to the pre-recorded shows. But first of all, obviously, before we get into the review, can I just say thank you very much for all of your support and all of everyone that's given me the support over the last few race previews and reviews, and everyone in the comments. Obviously, thank you very much for all of you guys obviously supporting me, myself, and everyone along the way. But obviously, make sure you keep smashing that like button and, of course, subscribe to the channel. And of course, we are, as I said, we're going to be covering the Mexican Grand Prix, where, of course, Max Verstappen made it 16 wins of the season, comprehensively from turn one, got in front, obviously starting P3 behind the two Ferraris. A very good qualifying session from Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, but unfortunately couldn't really get the job done into turn one. We will talk about the incident on turn one, of course, but obviously, as you can see from the picture there, Max Verstappen winning his 16th Formula One race of the season, making it win number 51 in his Formula One career, and of course, just continuing to dominate this 2023 season with 3 races to go. Courtney is in the comments, guys. Obviously, if you do want to talk to Courtney, he's put hello from the depths of cyberspace. So obviously, if you do want to talk to Courtney in the comments, obviously, you're more than welcome to, guys. Of course, get your comments in, what you felt, obviously, on the result this weekend as well. I felt it was quite an interesting race. Obviously Max Verstappen getting the victory, but I think it was quite an interesting race, especially from the restart. Halfway through the race, obviously there was a bit more of a sort of a strategic sort of situations for the teams going into that second half of the race from the stop from Kevin Magnussen. But we will talk about the incident in turn one. Of course, as you can see there, that was Sergio Perez going into turn one and colliding with the pole sitter, which was Charles Leclerc. Of course, Carlos Sainz, as you can see behind, got a very poor start for himself, dropping down the order to P4 from that result as well. And people have seen it. Sergio Perez got a very good launch, obviously, as well as Max. I think Perez got the quickest launch out of all of the drivers on the grid, to be fair, especially from the front runners. And Perez was able to catch Max in the slipstream. He was able to go around the outside. They went 3 wide into the first corner. And I think he sort of, from my own personal opinion, I generally felt that he maybe misjudged the fact of how much room he had on the outside going into turn one. Obviously, going in at that speed as well, it's very difficult to try and maintain and difficult to try and manage, the situation going into the first turn and obviously turn 2 as well. I also felt that within this situation with Sergio Perez, I generally felt that he forgot where, Charles Leclerc couldn't really go anywhere. He was sort of sandwiched in between the Red Bulls. Max Verstappen obviously had the inside line. He was the guy that was going to go into turn one in front, and Perez, tried to get a launch on both Verstappen and Leclerc as well. And in the end of it, he's come out at the end of it with, retiring from the race and his home Grand Prix as well, in a race where, Sergio really had to put on a performance and really had to really answer the critics and really sort of show Red Bull why he is still, the right driver for next year in the Red Bull car. And he's not really done himself any favors with this incident as well. So it's completely a driving error from the Mexican. In his home Grand Prix, he was absolutely devastated to retire, especially early on from a mistake from his own doing. Going into turn one, of course, Sergio Perez, under pressure, and sort of not really dealing with that pressure, trying to get in front to try and please the crowd, try and get himself into a position where he can really try and manage the race. And it backfired. At the end of the day, it wasn't no one's fault apart from his own, unfortunately. So, guys in the comments, let me know what you think, obviously, of the incident into turn one. Obviously, I'm going to read, I'll have Courtney has put a few comments in. He's put the red flag brought the race to life. I will talk about the red flag very soon, mate. It's a shame Lando had a bad Saturday because he would have been right up there, 100%. Sergio Perez really showing the pressure he's under, getting out qualified by a guy who's been linked with your seat in his home race. What a weekend it was as well from Daniel Riccardo, qualifying P4. in the end of it, finishing P7. And, Daniel Riccardo again proving that he's still good enough and he's still good to get potentially into that second seat for Red Bull next year. There's a lot of questions. There's been a lot of rumors going around. We've seen some outlets today that there was strong rumors with Alonso and possibly Sainz, and obviously the reports around Norris maybe for 2025. And, it's just opinions and, where, and maybe obviously the reports around Ricciardo as well. I mean, I don't know, obviously, what's going to happen. I mean, my own personal opinion, I still believe that Perez will be in the Red Bull in 2024. But with 3 races to go, Perez doesn't seal P2 in the championship. He's now only got a 20-point gap above Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton getting a very good second place finish and actually keeping his second place. If he would have had a second place kept for him from last weekend, then the gap would only be roughly, I think it would have only been 2 points. So Perez has got to see himself very lucky to still be 20 points in front of the race for second place in the Drivers' Championship as well. So yeah, quite an interesting start. And obviously from there, Max Verstappen sort of, dealt with the pace. Obviously had a good lead over the Ferraris. Lewis at times was really struggling to try and get past Carlos Sainz. That straight line speed of the Ferrari was always vital. George Russell was trying to get in front of, I think it was Oscar Piastri as well, who had a decent start. So there was lots of battles sort of in and around the first opening laps of the race. Obviously, the pit stops come into play. Max decided to go into the hard compound tire. There was a lot of grip and a lot of good use on those hard compound tires. I believe Norris and Tsunoda pitted very early. And once they got clear air, I mean, they were setting some very good lap times on that tire. So it allowed sort of, Red Bull to make the opportunity. They found the gap, which I believe Max got in front of Gasly. I think it was in 7th after the pit stop. So, Red Bull timed that really well with Max. And then there was the genuine response. Were Ferrari going to pit Leclerc, trying to see if they could respond, and they decided to stay out. And, Ferrari, to be honest, they stuck with their plan. And, the plan, I believe, was working to an extent. I think they had still had genuinely good life in their tires. Ferrari were adamant, the drivers were adamant. This is the plan. This is the opportunity that we've got. And then, they came into the pit stops. They came out. They had good, solid pit stops from the Ferraris. And then literally a few laps later, it sort of shot themselves in the foot, really, because this had happened. On lap 33, unfortunately, I mean, whether it was driver error, I don't know if anyone knows, obviously in the comments. I mean, I believe it was a problem with the car. But Kevin Magnussen, going in and obviously smashing the car to pieces, as you can see from the screen. Fortunately, Kevin Magnussen was able to walk away from the incident. And yeah, obviously they brought out the red flag, and as Courtney put in the comment, they brought out the red flag, which made sort of the race a bit more livelier. I mean, the first half of the race wasn't at its ultimate best, but the red flag did come into play with that incident from Kevin Magnussen, so it made it very interesting with the starting order. Max was still 1P1. He decided to come into the pits under the virtual safety car, and then obviously the red flag had came out, and obviously that was it. The safety car came out, sorry, not the virtual safety car, and obviously they decided to red flag the race. And obviously everyone was entitled to then have a free pit stop, really, change of tyres. Leclerc was able to change his front wing. Obviously, it was slightly damaged from the incident with Perez. So, yeah, it was really interesting to see what was going to happen. And then there was a couple of really brave decisions regarding tyre choice, because there was, 35 laps to go. Were the hard tyre the compound to go on, or was it the mediums? The medium tyre looked very quick, but obviously didn't last as long as the hards, as you would know. But Lewis Hamilton took the gamble. He really took the gamble. On the medium tyres, he was saying on the radio for the first few laps, this tyre is going to be a very long stint, and it's going to be very difficult to try and maintain pace, try and keep up with the leader's pace. Max Verstappen at the restart, as imagined, that he obviously got away really well, got a good launch, stayed in front. And for the rest of the race, of course, went on to cross the line for win number 16. But then if you look at throughout the rest of the order, the gamble that Charles Leclerc had made, obviously sticking on the hard tyres still, not going on the mediums. And then as a result, this happened, like this was the turning point for the race for P2. Lewis Hamilton really pushing. You can see all the dust and you can see all the dirt, as Lewis Hamilton was, clipping the grass as he was trying to overtake Charles Leclerc, and got his man and got into P2 and, dominated them last sort of 20 laps or so in that position, and came home in a very good, well-deserved P2 for Lewis Hamilton and for Mercedes. And, the Ferraris couldn't really do much about it. There was, 5-6 laps later that the team engineers were saying that, it's okay. Like, the medium tyres are not going to last. The hard tyres will come back into life later on during the rest of the race. And it just didn't happen for Charles Leclerc. It didn't happen for Ferrari. And Lewis Hamilton was able to, hold on and look after the tyres really well, have good pace, and come home in second place, and really well deserved. And then Charles Leclerc had to settle for P3. And yeah, it's sort of settled there a little bit. You think that, Lewis was there, Leclerc was going to be was settled for third. Sainz and Russell were maybe having their own little battle as well. But then, resurgently at the back as well, you had battles between Danny Rick as well, trying to catch with George Russell. Daniel Ricciardo was up there, was one of the drivers of the day yesterday. He was superb, Daniel Ricciardo, especially from his qualifying performance as well. And Courtney's obviously put in a comment. He said, I said it before, I reckon he'll start next season at Red Bull. Talking about Sergio Perez, but he'll be in trouble if he starts slowly at the competition are closer to Red Bull. Fully agree, mate. Early bowl prediction, Lando Norris will win his first race in Brazil. So, yeah, no, to be honest, I'm looking forward to your guys' predictions and previews, obviously, this week for the Brazilian Grand Prix, the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. But Lando, obviously, yeah, he had a very poor qualifying. Obviously, started literally at the back of the grid. Got driver of the day finishing in P5, making up 12 places. That takes some doing, especially around Mexico as well. It takes some doing. At least Ferrari stuck to plan A. Yeah, they stuck to plan A, mate. And unfortunately, it didn't work for him. They generally felt that they had a car that could potentially win the race. But unfortunately, they didn't. And, Leclerc had to settle for P3. Obviously, a decent day all round. Anyway, Sainz finishing P4. From starting first and second, it looks kind of sort of disappointing. But if you're going to win a race nowadays, like you have to finish in front of Max Verstappen. At the end of the day, if you finish in front of Max Verstappen, you're pretty much going to win the Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton tried his best, finished just under 14 seconds behind Max. Just didn't really have the pace, but obviously did take the fastest lap point at the very end as well. So that point could be very important going into these final three races. If Lewis feels he can get into the second place into the Drivers' Championship. We mentioned about Lando. Lando Norris. Also, there's a little picture of him there, finishing P5. Scoring 10 points for McLaren. Yesterday, starting P17. Coming through the order, passing his teammate. McLaren played that game. Obviously, they learned that obviously Lando had the pace. He was quicker than Piastri. Piastri let him go in the second DRS detection point, obviously on just after turn 3. And it sort of proved McLaren right. And, they in the end, they finished P5 and P8. So not a bad weekend for McLaren, considering the qualifying performance from Lando. Seeing Lando Norris finish P5 was a very, very good performance from him. And it's a good bold prediction, as Courtney said. Obviously, Lando could potentially get his first win of the season and first win of his career. He's put, does George Russell need to up his games in the last 3 races? Both Ferrari drivers seem to be more consistent in the constructors' battle. I think George done okay as they finish in P6. I think that the constructors' battle is very tight, as we all know. I do believe that with Lewis finishing in these positions, obviously the last few Grand Prix, he's been always challenging for the podium. And has George got to do a little bit more, to try and consolidate, Mercedes finishing P2 in the Constructors' Championship? I do feel, unfortunately for George, I think that incident, what happened in Singapore, I think that's actually affected his confidence a little bit. But there's no doubt in my mind that George Russell was able to really sort of come back into it. And I believe, in Brazil, it could be a track where Mercedes are strong. So let's see. It wouldn't surprise me potentially if George Russell gets another good solid, up to P4, P5 next weekend in Sao Paulo. But I think if he keeps up those consistent performances around the sort of P4, P5 mark, I think Mercedes will get second in the Constructors' Championship, depending as well where Lewis will finish as well. So as long as he does his job, and I think yesterday P6, maybe a bit disappointed that they couldn't hold on for fifth. Norris passing Russell towards the end. Maybe not holding on to P5 is a bit disappointing for them. But I think, Russell, I think should be quite sort of happy, I would say, from that performance yesterday. But P6 for Russell. But yeah, definitely the next three races have to be a lot more consistent compared to maybe his teammate. Another incident, obviously, we'll talk about, which happened, I believe, on lap 49. I believe it happened, which was a big battle between Yuki Tsunoda and Oscar Piastri. And as you can see from the picture, obviously, Oscar Piastri and Yuki Tsunoda coming together in turn one, like Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez did. Yuki Tsunoda, fortunately enough, was able to get back and continue and got himself back into finishing P12, which the Alpha Tauris yesterday were absolutely sensational. I mean, Danny Rick qualifying P4, finishing P7, scoring 6 points for the team. Yuki Tsunoda, unfortunately, not able to score points. Easily could have got himself P8 or P9 yesterday. He was very good, Yuki, and bit of driver error. I mean, when I first saw it, I generally felt that did Oscar Piastri come a bit more towards the left. There is that sort of angle where he does come slightly left, and it may sort of trigger the collision with Tsunoda. But I do think Tsunoda has to realize as well, consider like sort of similar to Perez, that there was a lot more space on the outside he could have used and benefited going into turn 2 and to turn 3 as well, and into the DRS detection point, going into that straight up to turn 4. So I do think that, Yuki, will sort of look back at that, even though he was disappointed that he's collided with Piastri. But I mean, for me, that just goes down for me as driver error, unfortunately. I felt that there could have been an infringement from Piastri, but looking at it again, in my own opinion, I definitely believe that Yuki should have done a little bit better in that scenario. But take away, that incident, and take away that the performance from Alpha Tauri this weekend was sensational. As I said, P7 for Danny Rick, and of course P12 for Tsunoda, but could have been in the points himself as well. So yeah, I mean, obviously, unfortunately for that was the case. And obviously, apart from that, there was some very good, strong performances as well around the grid. The Alpine's very sort of in Alpine world or Alpine land, as what Lee and Courtney have said. P10, P11, Esteban Ocon in the points, and Gasly just finishing 4 seconds behind his teammate in P11. Alex Albon, P9, obviously taking up the mistake from Yuki Tsunoda, and of course getting himself a couple of points as well for Williams, and obviously increases their chances, in staying above the bottom 3 teams in the championship, the Constructors' Championship. You look around the rest of the grid, obviously a very poor weekend again from Sergio Perez. Obviously, Kevin Magnussen obviously having the retirement. Both Aston Martins DNF. I mean, Fernando Alonso struggled, really, really struggled for pace, really struggled all weekend, Fernando. Aston Martin deciding to, retire the car. It's obviously a really poor weekend for Fernando. And then you look at Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll, to be fair, I thought was quite unlucky. He did challenge with Valtteri Bottas. Bottas in the end of it was given a penalty, finishing P15 in the end in the classified order. But Lance Stroll actually had a decent sort of race, to be fair. Got himself up the order. Not as quick as sort of what Lando was obviously achieving, because Aston Martin haven't got that sort of pace, of course not. But, at the end of the day, like Lance Stroll actually trying to sort of prove that he is maybe potentially good enough. I've said my opinion on him, and I'll say it again. I don't think Lance Stroll is definitely good enough. I don't think he's good enough. I don't think he's the future to get Aston Martin winning races and potentially winning podiums. But it's up to them what they decide to do. At the end of the day, Lance Stroll had a decent run out yesterday, but unfortunately got collided with Valtteri Bottas. Looking elsewhere, Nico Hülkenberg finishing 13th. Solid show for Haas and for Nico Hülkenberg. And obviously the 2 Alfa Romeos completing the classification in Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas as well. Logan Sargent retiring as well from the race in P16. And as I said, the two Aston Martins, K-Mag and Perez, also completing the order. Courtney Sport, Alex Albon should be getting a top driver again. See, again, there's another one. I mean, obviously, he had the move at Red Bull. And if you look at Red Bull over the years, obviously, with the teammates that Max has had, Albon and Gasly and, Danny Rick as well, is there, obviously, are they able to compete with Max? Are they able to sustain that level and able to sort of push on Red Bull as well? Are they able to, work alongside Max Verstappen and Red Bull as well? Because Max Verstappen, as we know, is the number one driver for Red Bull and will be, I believe, for many years. But are they able to make sure that they understand that properly, at least for a year or two before they could potentially mount a challenge by themselves? But Red Bull have got it a lot to do. Alex Albon, for me, I think does deserve a big drive. And you said, who would you have at Aston Martin? There's your answer. I believe that Alex Albon and Fernando Alonso would be an unbelievable team for Aston Martin. So if you want my opinion, who I would have to replace Lance Stroll, if I was Aston Martin, I'm looking at someone like Alex Albon. I really am. I know there's a lot of uncertainty about some teams in the top end of the grid as well. If you look at Ferrari, obviously the two drivers have only got a year left on their deals. Is there a lure that maybe they could go for Leclerc or go for Sainz, or maybe Checo? I mean, Sergio Perez could be an option for Aston Martin as well. Who knows? Sergio Perez, if he's not with a drive in 2024, if Danny Rick takes over, is there a swap? Maybe potentially he goes to Alpha Tauri, or does sort of Max Verstappen and Danny Rick go together, Perez go with Sonoda, or there's so many names, even on the grid. There's names off the grid as well, but Aston Martin, I'm looking at someone like Albon. Obviously, if the Perez situation happens, it happens. But apart from that, mate, and apart from that, all the guys in the comments, obviously, make sure you get your comments in and make sure you like the stream as well. And as I said, Adam and the guys will be live, not live, but they will be doing their shows, I believe, from tomorrow, Wednesday, maybe. So obviously, check those out. Of course, it's the Brazilian Grand Prix preview this week. And yeah, obviously, I think we'll wrap it there, to be quite honest with you. Quite of a short one tonight. Obviously, I just wanted to make sure that there's obviously the regular content that is still going out. But as I said earlier, Max Verstappen, of course, winning the Mexican Grand Prix, his 16th Grand Prix win of the season, win number 51 of his Formula One career, and continuously breaking more records. Of course, he broke his record from last year. He has won the most races in a Formula One season with 16. Obviously breaking his previous record with 15, and yeah, just continues to, not sort of like at the end of the day, like, he's a great driver and he's got the best car on the grid at the moment. So there's not really, if you're going to win a race, you must beat Max Verstappen. That's the way to go. But guys, we'll wrap it there. And as I said, the guys will be back this week for the much more regular content, which you all love and you will obviously love to listen to. We're really sorry, of course, that we're not been able to upload a lot on Spotify and all of the audio platforms. We have had some technical issues this week regarding that. So Adam will be, as I said, he will be bringing that back. So obviously all of you guys that have been watching on YouTube, can I just say for myself, thank you very much for obviously all of your support. Thank you very much for listening to me blabber on about Formula One. And obviously, yeah, I mean, you're going to see me, potentially before the end of the season, maybe, or next season as well. So obviously it'll be really good to obviously get your comments in. And thank you again for all your support and all your love and all the commitment you've shown over the last few weeks watching the DNF1 podcast. So make sure you hit that like button and of course subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'm going to do it for one last time before Adam's live again, and before he's back. If you're not first or if you're not last, you're probably DNF1. So guys, take care, stay safe, and of course we will see you for the Brazilian Grand Prix preview in the next few days' time.